Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be talking about multi-environment visibility versus spreadsheet views of your ServiceNow instances. Today's agenda is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. We're going to be covering, obviously, the introductions. We'll introduce myself and my guest here as well, and my co-host, shall I say. It will cover the root causes of what is and what causes environment inconsistencies in all of your instances, and then apply some of those problems to Shang Tzu's wisdom, which is the power of accurate information. And then we'll jump into how X-Type provides that power of accurate information and provides multi-environment visibility. So with that, we'll jump right in. I am your co-host, Scott Wilson, Double L Wilson, head of product marketing here at X-Type. And Tim, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Scott. My name is Tim Proven, senior field engineer here at X-Type.
Perfect. And as before, Tim, I say before because of our last webinar, can you just give a quick synopsis of your background in ServiceNow? Because I think it's pretty relevant. You're a journeyman when it comes to ServiceNow. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've been around the ecosystem for quite some time now, going on about 15 years with previously with implementation partners, helping customers stand up ServiceNow, administer it after they've already been stood up, or just implement new applications.
Perfect. So in other words, you're going to keep me honest as we go through their narration and talk through this today. Perfect. Okay, so first of all, let's just cover an overview of ServiceNow inconsistencies. So I have here on the screen just a simple drawing of, at least for now, 3 different instances. We got a development instance, a testing instance, and a production instance. And you'll see we got some dots, Tim, that I've put on here. And the dots are representing changes. They could represent update sets. They can represent apps, store apps, scoped apps, what have you. But as you see, Tim, there are already some differences. Before I animate or talk about anything, this is to be expected, right? Production actually looks different than dev.
Yeah, I mean, development's
obviously
a moving target to say the least. You're constantly doing work, and I don't know that I've ever seen a customer that's gotten to a point where they don't have development work to do.
Right. So, and we've designated that with the 3 different color dots. So we got a little bit more in dev. Obviously, we want to move up into production. And so we begin by, let's say, moving yellow. And again, the yellow could represent an update sets, plural, some type of change, right? Your apps, whatever. And we go into testing, but lo and behold, there is some type of a conflict, preview error, whatever. So we come in and make that particular change or whatever's got to change, but that now represents a difference, a delta from testing to dev. And then we want to move this into production. So what we then do in preparation for that is we will clone production to make that preparation. So we can then stand up a pre-prod instance. Everything scanning okay so far, Tim?
So far, so good. There's reasons for that orange dot to show up on test. Not necessarily best practice, but it does happen. It happens a lot.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so now we've stood up our pre-prod instance, right? We want to go ahead and begin moving those things forward, and we do, but lo and behold, since prod doesn't look like testing, there's maybe, again, I'm introducing another dot to represent that, I got to make some other type of corrective change to make it work. And
yep.
I don't know.
And as you're developing, you want to get these things done as quick as possible. Like I said, there's reasons behind those things showing up in instances and not being back at dev or testing.
Right, exactly. This is just kind of the normal way things go.
Yep.
And so then ultimately we make our move into production, or try to move that thing into production. And, but of course, something else goes wrong. We make another change and so on and so forth. The point is, as time goes on, and I've just animated this a bit forward, as you can see, you can fast forward and rinse and repeat this. Now all of our instances fundamentally all look different. Is that pretty common, you would say, Tim?
Yeah, that's extremely common. It leads to the clonings that are required in order to keep data in sync versus having everything in every instance, like following best practices in development.
Right. And is it is it common for people to actually make changes in production, like a hot fix or something, and it doesn't make its way back to all these other instances?
Well, I guess that depends on what you mean by common. It's never recommended that you make the changes directly in production, but I've seen it. I can't say I haven't done it.
Yeah, but I mean, normally it'd be something small, like correcting a preview error, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I had one line in a script that was off by a little bit, just quick little change to fix it.
Right. And of course you do this because a lot of times these changes, these updates are happening late at night, off hours, right? Late at night, holidays, whatever. You're trying to hurry. But the net is you get something like this over time. They look different. And of course, it can look even worse when you've got federated development. Well, now you've got multiple dev instances. Yeah. And in this graph here, you can see that testing doesn't look exactly like either dev 1 or dev 2. It's got bits and parts of both, but doesn't look precisely.
Yeah, you've got developers spread out across your environment doing different things on different applications, potentially touching the same objects. It can get a little complicated, to say the least.
And so for me, in my DevOps background, I look at this, Tim, and I sit there and think, well, that means if developers now are making changes, right, writing a scoped out, or citizen developer, even now with the App Engine Studio, you could have non-technical people in theory making things, and we'll say in a dev instance, right, and it'll follow a pipeline to get into test. But regardless, now you've got these changes that are occurring, and I look at this and think, well, you're almost baking in problems right into the recipe. Right?
Oh, of course.
Right out of the gate, because now since the environments, the instances do not look the same, that what works in dev classically is now not guaranteed to work in test before you even get to test anything. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. You've got objects that have been changed so many different times by different people in different instances, all trying to come into a single testing environment that you potentially made changes at that testing environment to that same object as well. And then which one wins? Whose code or changes, configurations should be the truth in order to make it to production and have everybody's stuff work.
Right. So there's actually a potential for maybe even orphaned an update set or something potentially.
Yeah.
Or maybe not as big as an update set, but an item in an update set. When you say, oh, we'll just go with this guy's one because it's got bulk of everything we need. And then anyways, so on and so forth. The point is, you've got all these changes. That means you can have problems right away. So what does this mean that your instances aren't the same? What are the implications of this? Now for this chart here, this slide, and Tim, I want you to help explain some of the implications, because it's like, okay, we've stated the obvious maybe for many people. Okay, yes, the environments are going to be inconsistent. This is why we clone a lot. And what I've got here in the background for this slide is kind of a look of what a spreadsheet is when you do your release plans, where you bring up a dozen different tabs and you try to correlate all the different changes, the differences, and you try to put them on here. Because I look at it as like, well, if you do something like that, that's a point in time versus a real-time view. That's a problem. But
yep.
You'd mentioned earlier, Tim, cloning is one way to get around this, or to attempt to. What are the problems with cloning?
Well, yeah, like you have listed here with cloning, you've got to worry about the work that's being done in lower environments because it hasn't made it to production yet, right? So you have to identify what's still in progress, but that the in progress work is really just at your development stage, right? So what happens to the work from development that you've completed and moved to testing, but hasn't been moved to prod? You have to worry about that piece, right? So you've got your whole environment has potentials of work to be lost, and when you do that clone, and how do you keep track of it, right? Spreadsheets from multiple developers and hope that they remembered.
Like a spreadsheet we're showing here is kind of the masked background here, right? Developers got to go back and remember everything that they've done. So
right, everything that they've done and moved since the last clone, and who knows when that was, right? If it,
right,
a month at the least amount of time, right? But every 6 months cloning just so you can support upgrades, who knows where code is
Right.
in your environment.
Exactly. And so we're obviously not saying cloning is wrong. We're just saying if you're using cloning, I think to overcome environment inconsistencies, that's what's problematic, not cloning
Yes.
itself. There are a lot of good reasons to clone regularly. At the very least, the upgrades you do once or twice a year. But I don't know. I always liken it to, Tim, just like your phone or your laptop. Sometimes, especially laptops, you just got to restart it. It just needs to, despite all your other things you do, right? And I think it's similar. You just need to kind of keep things cleaned up and with the latest and so forth. But
Yep.
trying to do it more than that, like you mentioned, it just inserts unintended risk into your pipeline. And then the work. You already mentioned that the inaccuracy of trying to identify the work, death by a dozen tabs.
Yep,
And
your
then
war
every
rooms on Friday nights to Saturday morning, Sunday, hopefully not all
yeah,
weekend long, with spreadsheets that are twice the size of this one that's on the
yeah,
screen. Yeah.
because the imports always work 100% when you
Oh yeah,
import your work in progress, right?
yeah, and
Definitely.
I've of course I copied and pasted the name of the update set correctly on every line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which is not bad when you're doing this every so often. I don't know what a good recommended cloning rate is. I'm sure ServiceNow has some guidelines, and it's variable depending on your instances. But the point is, this isn't something you want to do, like let's say every week to overcome environment inconsistencies, right? Because
Right.
of everything we've listed here.
Right. If you're cloning often, it's hopefully not because your environments are inconsistent, and it's more around the fact that you want the data from production, or you just want that clean start every so often.
Exactly. So we've covered the landscape, the overview of why this occurs, that it does occur, the risks and problems involved with trying to overcome the inconsistencies. So let's go to Sun Tzu. So for those who are not familiar, Sun Tzu is basically a Chinese, we'll call him a philosopher, but he was also a general in China, and he had a very famous book, or what has now been formulated as a book, called The Art of War, that virtually everyone in every military academy globally reads. But one of his, and not just that, business leaders read the book. I mean, his insights are pretty good. And one of the insights he had was called the power of accurate information. And basically what he summarized was that knowledge is itself power. That is, in fact, one of the greatest powers. It allows you to have better decision making. You can have better anticipation of changes, market changes, geopolitical changes, whatever's coming up. It allows you to be more agile, and it improves your velocity, because if you know what reality is, then you can be more agile and you can adapt more quickly, because you do not run in to the unknowns very often, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes
Or
sense, and it definitely applies to your ServiceNow instance and environment, right? In multiple ways, not just the knowledge of where development is and it across the stack, right? But also how you're deploying, the success rates. That I've always been a firm believer of, when implementing anything within ServiceNow, is look at it from a reporting standpoint first and work your way backwards, because that data that you're going to have is really going to be what's driving the business.
That's right. And I like to use flight analogies with this too, is that airplanes are auto correcting their navigation many times a minute, right? They're just these little continual changes because they have very accurate maps of where they're trying to go. If they didn't do this, right? If you just took off from the airport and went off and did not factor in all the things that happen as you go, right? You got the
Yep.
rotation of the earth, you got the jet stream winds. I mean, there's all these other little things that get in the way of what should you think happen. You would be miles off your target if you weren't making those auto corrections. And that's so
Yep.
that level of accuracy allows the plane to be agile. And so they get to their destination faster. When we first started with the flight, just a quick tangent, not granted they weren't jet engines, but nonetheless, they used land markers. So the pilots would have to fly and look and follow the road like a car would, right? But now with more accurate information, of course, they're flying a mile up. But with more accurate information, they don't have to keep doing that, but they can course correct as they go. So
Right.
how does X-Type help? Well, this is X-Type. A screenshot of it, our multi-environment visibility. I don't know if you wanted to kind of help explain what we're looking at here real quick, Tim.
Sure. The screenshot is of our update set view, right? And so this gives you a view across your entire environment, in this case, 2 development instances, a QA and a production. It shows where update sets are within that environment, right? So whether or not it's in progress in development 1, or it's been deployed to QA, or even all the way up to production. It also shows whether or not you've got any type of preview issues or failed deployments for any reason.
Exactly. Everything's color coded. You can see the preview issues. You see the little flags. These are designating the origin point for, in this case, an update sets. The little icon here at the top, the tree, is showing you what update sets are part of a batch. But this is just for update sets, as you said, Tim, but we also have a app that's in the ServiceNow store that does plugins, apps, and scoped apps and store apps, and gives you the same view. You can also see the ServiceNow versions in that app. So you can actually go download that and get that installed on your ServiceNow instances today, and at least get that line of visibility. And then, of course, with our X-Type profit, for paid product, you can get this additional insight, as well as the automations that can help auto remediate a lot of this as well. And so with the one last thing I would say this in the context of what we've talked about, Tim, and in the context of the title of this, is that any other thing you're doing except X-Type, you're probably trying to compile yourself. And that really represents a point in time view, like you're putting it in a spreadsheet or something, or some other type of report. X-Type, this view here, Tim, as you described, it's real time.
Right.
It's not point in time, it's real time.
The only way you get anything close to real time without the X-Type is 4 windows in this case, because we've got 4 instances all right, open to the same page for their respective instance. And that's the only other way you can look at it. And I've got 3 large monitors on my desk, and there's still not enough real estate to do that.
Right. And then even with that, you're looking around. Here it's one concise view, color-coded, correlated, organized for you, so you can quickly not only see real-time information, but at an instant grasp what is going on. And of course, you can see at the top additional filters and so forth. So just to summarize everything that we covered here, multi-environment visibility is going to grab you. What X-Type provides with that multi-environment visibility is letting you know what is where. No guessing, no point in time reporting, real-time reporting. You can actually see everything: the update sets, plugins, scoped apps, store apps, and the ServiceNow versions across your instance, just like that, just in an instance. No dozen tabs, or at least as we showed here, 4 tabs open. You know right away, and everyone on your team knows. So now you can act on accurate information. This would, of course, lead you to reduce the amount of work that could be lost, right? We improve your propagation as you move your migrations forward, because you would know beforehand what instances look like and could take remediation actions, or even know that you might have to do some additional work before you go in there. So we're able to reduce the errors. And I want to state here that everything we've talked about here and what X-Type is helping you with, this is not a quality problem. I hear sometimes go, oh yeah, it's quality. No, these are problems that occur before you can even determine if you have a quality problem, where you're running formal testing, right?
Right.
And so ultimately, what X-Type is going to help you do is illuminate and eliminate environment inconsistencies. Now, we're not talking about the eliminate part. That's some of the additional functionality X-Type has. Today, we were focusing on just the visibility component. But as I said, we do have a store in the ServiceNow store app, the App Store, the ServiceNow App Store, and you can download it and get started with that today. And just to end with our slide real quick, you can see a lot of our customers are here and what we do. Global company, we're a ServiceNow partner. We are very happy to be part of the ServiceNow ecosystem. And we were at the World Forums this year, and they're looking forward to being at Knowledge next year as well. So you will see us around. But with that, I think we'll open it up to any questions. So let me take a look at that real quick and see what we got going on here as far as questions. Okay, so I think maybe someone missed part of the session here, Tim, because we did cover this, but I'll go ahead and ask it for you to answer. They're asking,
right.
Does X-Type only show update sets?
Yeah, and so the answer to that is no. And actually, the X-Type View application out on the App Store shows you everything else: scoped apps, store apps, plugins, whether or not they're missing, different versions, your ServiceNow instance versions, all on a single pane of glass.
Exactly. Then another question we got here is, how does X-Type do this? How does it know what is where?
Well, so we have our own set of APIs that pull the information from your instances and correlates it all to provide it on a single pane of glass.
Exactly. And just to phrase it a different way, what you said, Tim, is the cool thing about X-Type is it is a native application to your ServiceNow and ServiceNow instances.
Yep.
Right. It sits in the instances, so it's that's where it gets its line of sight from. Looks like we got another question. Says if a change is orphaned, like an update set is orphaned, would X-Type show what that is? Or yeah.
So if an update set gets left on an instance and is orphaned, I think so too. Yeah. So X-Type will show you all update sets. We even keep track of update sets that have been deleted off of an instance and can show you that too. So you have full auditability, traceability of what was done by who, when, across your entire stack.
Exactly. I should also say that one of the beautiful things about X-Type when you are cloning is that we can very quickly, with a quick filter, show you everything that should be exported. You don't have to compile that yourself. We will tell you precisely what should be exported. No multiple tabs need to apply, right?
Yep. On a single screen, be able to see what's in production versus what's not in production, and go through all of your instances and back out that data or development work so that you don't lose it.
Perfect. Well, that's all we got time for. Appreciate the questions, Tim. As always, I loved working with you today. And since it is this time of year, we just want to thank you all for your support. Wish you a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving next week. And with that, we'll sign off till next time. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, bye.
Bye.